So on today's video, we're talking deck switches. I'm going to show you a couple in particular and different applications so that you know when is the best time to use a deck switch, as well as different tips on how to maximize the actual usage of a deck switch and show you just different things to avoid. So for this first deck switch, it's very simple. You have a deck of cards. This deck could be shuffled and mixed, and of course at this point you're going to need some sort of marker. So you reach in, you grab a marker, and you hand it to the participant. Now of course in that action I've switched decks because this deck has a blue back and just a red cover card. Now that is my preferred deck switch, and it comes from a Tommy Wonder idea. Now in this case, our reasoning for going into our pockets is looking for a Sharpie marker. You don't need to have a reason like a Sharpie marker. It could be the box, it could be something else. But I do like this because it does provide your hands with a reasoning, especially if you give the idea or the impression that the Sharpie is on the table somehow. So let's talk about the mechanics of this particular switch. So for this, it helps if you have deeper pockets. So it does help if you have deeper pockets. So for this, I have these shorts that's very easy to switch. If you have dress pants, it makes it infinitely easier. If you have a jacket, it does make it easier. I wouldn't go as far as using a hoodie, because if you notice a hoodie, the pocket, it tends to lean with whatever object is inside. So I wouldn't go with a hoodie. If you're wearing jeans, you're going to have to improvise and use your back pocket. The deck that's going to be switched in is going to be in your left pocket, in this case here. Now it's going to be very important. One tip that I'm going to stress later on is this idea that whatever deck you choose to switch in matches the deck as much as possible. So matches it in condition, matches it. I go even as far as making sure that the bottom card matches. So you notice that the Joker matches here, even though, yeah, this one doesn't have the diamond colored. This one does. But I would go as far as to match the bottom card just in case. So this deck goes inside of your pocket like this. So the back towards your body and the Joker face towards the spectator. So that's the way that goes inside of your pocket. Next, in the right pocket, you have a Sharpie marker ready to go. So this Sharpie marker just goes in your right pocket, and the deck is in your left hand. So what's going to happen here is that you are going to have a deck of cards. This deck could be shuffled. This could be the deck that you've been using the entire night. But at some point, you're going to need a Sharpie marker. So you say, do you have a Sharpie? I know I had one on me here, but I'll tell you what. I take that marker, and we're going to use this with this particular deck. So if you could just pick a card. Now, the context here is that the spectator is with the Sharpie marker. You ask them a question, which is going to engage them and distract them from the fact that you are, in fact, switching decks. It shouldn't be a quick motion. It shouldn't be a guilty feeling. You are looking for a Sharpie marker, and you're asking them if they have a Sharpie marker. So the body language here is you're putting the cards in your right hand mechanics grip. That's the first step here. Then you're going to pat your pockets here, supposedly looking for a Sharpie marker. Now, of course, this is a natural action here, even though you don't have pockets here, even though you don't have pockets here necessarily. It's still natural action to ask them, do you have a Sharpie marker? Now, of course, in that action, what's going to happen is that I'm going to reach into both pockets with both my hands. Now, I'm going to leave this deck, come out with the Sharpie marker at the same time that I come out with this deck in this hand, presenting the Sharpie marker to the spectator. It's a very bold switch, but their focus isn't on the cards. Their focus is on the Sharpie marker. So that's the part that's going to draw their attention and distract them from the fact that there's a discrepancy in the fact that you put this deck in this pocket and pulled it out of this pocket. So that, one more time, with full body language, should be like this. You have the deck of cards. You tell the spectator, do you have a Sharpie? No? I could have sworn I saw you have a Sharpie. I'll tell you what, I think I have one. Go ahead, use that, open it up, take a whiff, take a deep whiff. And at that point, I might disarm them with some sort of joke in that case. But that is the Sharpie switch. Now, just to talk a little bit more about this particular deck switch, this is something that I first saw Tommy Wonder do. And Tommy Wonder talks about this in extensive detail in his works. But it's one of my favorite deck switches because it doesn't require the decks to be in the same pocket. Oftentimes, one of the issues that I've had with deck switches is that you're going into one pocket, pulling out one deck and pulling out the other, and not having the decks come in contact, which is a very difficult thing to do. Now, Tommy Wonder eliminated this by just putting one deck in one pocket and coming out with it in the other pocket. So this by itself works as a wonderful deck switch. If you have the minimal misdirection or direction of attention, you're going to be able to execute the switch even without the Sharpie marker, just by drawing attention to the box. So at this point you go, you know where the box is? Okay, there it is. Perfect. That's it. That's all it takes. You're putting literally this deck in the right hand mechanics grip. That goes in your right pocket. You come out with the deck in your left pocket. That goes inside of the box or wherever. Now, just a couple finesse points here. You are holding the deck in right hand mechanics grip. You're going into your pockets with both your hands. You're calling the spectator's attention, and then you're coming out the deck in the left hand. So the action should be something that you're trying to convey as being natural. You're not trying to be unnatural. You're not trying to do a quick gesture. It's not, you know, it's not this choreographed move, but it just should come natural to the spectator, especially if there's something of a request. So if the spectator's attention is focused on the box, if you're looking for the box, if you're looking for a Sharpie marker, if you're looking for something else, that's where the switch comes in place. So it should be something that's a natural movement. It shouldn't be jerky whatsoever. So that is one tip on that one. Now the next deck switch is very, very easy to do because it's done on the offbeat. So in this particular case, what you're going to do is you are going to switch decks inside of the box. Now I'm going to illustrate using a deck of cards that's a different color just to show you guys. However, this is obviously to be done with a deck box of the same exact color. So in this case, again, for the purpose of illustration, I'm going to be using a blue deck and a red deck. However, either use 2 blue decks or 2 red decks. So this is the way that switch works. Now, of course, you're going to have the deck that's going to be switched in your left pocket, and you're going to be active with this particular deck. So this deck could be the deck that you've been using all night. It could be the deck that you've been using sporadically. But ultimately what's going to happen is that you're going to end your set. You're going to put these cards away, and you're going to put them in your pocket. Then you're going to take them out as you realize, you know what, let me just do this one thing here, because a lot of people think that I'm using like a gimmick prop, and I'm not. I'm not using gimmick props. But what does help is that this is in fact a magic marker. Do you know why it's called a magic marker, sir? You don't, because if you uncap it and you just take a big whiff of that little magic point, you start seeing colors. That's why it's. You want to see one more trick? You want to see one more? All right, I'll show you one last trick, but I promise this has to be the last one. So go ahead, pick a card. You see that little? That's pretty much improvised, but it does lead into a nice little deck switch. So all that's happening is that you are giving the conviction that you are ending a set. So in this case, you're ending a set. You don't need the deck anymore. You're putting the deck in the box. The box goes in the pocket, and you draw the attention to something else. So at this point, you could do a coin trick, you could do something else, or you could draw attention immediately to something that's on the table, whether it's a fork, whether it's a Sharpie marker, and you just riff on that. So in this case, the deck goes inside of your pocket in the box. You go, as a matter of fact, you know what? The marker is actually something that helps out a lot. And I just come back out with the deck. So I put one deck inside of my pocket. I come out with the other deck as I draw attention to something else. And that is just where I go. It's as simple as that. People tend to overcomplicate these things, but they're not going to remember this moment, especially if it happens on the offbeat, and especially if their attention is distracted on something else. So in this case, the attention goes on the marker. So all in all, it should look a little bit like this. So you guys like that? Yeah, I know. I'm really good at what I do. But actually, honestly, the marker helps out a lot because, well, it's a magic marker. A deck switch. So that's it. So those are just the 2 deck switches. Now, the first one is heavily inspired by the works of Tommy Wonder. If you guys want more information, I think, as a matter of fact, there's a free lecture on YouTube released by somebody that actually filmed it in the 80s, where Tommy Wonder talks about this particular deck switch. So I'm going to be linking that below. But what's important is that you have a couple different things in mind when you do a deck switch. So number 1, the trick that you jump into after the deck switch should not imply that a switch of the deck has taken place. So for example, I wouldn't go right off the bat to a deck of cards that happens to change color. I wouldn't do that because of the fact that it implies that the deck was switched. So you want a little bit of time misdirection. You want some time between when you actually switch the deck to when you're actually showing the trick to imply that there hasn't been any action that's taken place from this point to this point. So make sure that the trick that you do does not imply that there's a deck switch. So what that means is that you're switching the decks for what purpose? You're either switching it to ring in a stacked deck, whether that's a deck that you've memorized, or Sai Stebbins, or something like that. Doesn't necessarily have to be a full stack. It could be a partial stack. So it could be a particular stack for an individual trick. You could switch it for a deck that's been set up maybe for a gambling demonstration or something like that, which ties into the first one. You could tie it in for a certain kicker. So maybe the deck is a new deck order and you want to do a trick where the kicker happens to be the deck reestablishing itself in new deck order. You could do it for some sort of gimmick. So if the deck happens to be blank faced, or if there's some, again, time misdirection between you switching the deck and doing it, and then you could actually finish with the cards being in blank. That's another way or reason you might want to ring in a gimmick deck. There's a lot of things that you could do with a deck switch. And it doesn't just necessarily have to be deck switch and then deck, boom, kicker, they're all blank. Now they're red, now they're blue. It doesn't have to be that. You could switch it in. And one of the strongest things you could do is switch it in for a stacked deck where the spectator had no idea how you could be accomplishing these things, because that supposedly has been a deck of cards that's been shuffled by everyone. So hopefully you've had the deck shuffled thoroughly by different participants. So when you do something that involves a memorized deck or a stacked deck, it becomes that much more impossible using a deck switch. So those are two simple moves. I hope you guys practice them, even though they are relatively simple, because it is all based on conviction. It's all based on body language. It is a move that needs to be done naturally. It can't be something done jerky or unnaturally, because spectators will pick up on that and they will remember that. If, for example, the last trick you do or the reason you're switching in the deck might imply that you have, in fact, needed to switch the deck or something like that, which, again, don't do. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you guys for being part of the Academy. Please leave in the comments below different things that you guys would use for this particular deck switch. They're gimmickless, they're impromptu, so they don't necessarily require sort of gimmicks that you would purchase from a magic shop, so that's always a benefit. So make sure to leave it there, and hope to see you guys on the next lesson.